how the people are doing. So this is finally time for our coveted video comparison between possibly one of the, if not the best video camera that we have, the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it is going up against the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Now see, this phone is interesting. It is kind of like a contender, especially in the professional realm with all the tools and options that it provides. It really is quite the contender when it comes to really good and, once again, professional videography. Maybe the regular stuff is not going to be quite as enticing or quite as consistently incredible as you might expect from the iPhone, but, well, when it comes to professional stuff, it's actually going to have an upper hand, so to speak. We'll get to it soon enough. But in the selfie department, I think both should have similar video quality. I mean, the specs are the same, 4K 60 all the way through. This is 4K 30, of course, but the audio quality, as far as I can remember, with the video comparison I made previously with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, it might actually be even better, but we'll see soon enough. It's a selfie video. I think it's more than obvious, right? The iPhone's quality is leaps and bounds ahead as opposed to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra for a simple reason: the level of noise and grain. Actually, there are two reasons. You see, the dynamic range is also very hit and miss. I do see some blown out highlights in some cases with the iPhone, but it's significantly better balanced. I think the exposure is much more under control as opposed to the Xiaomi, which is more often than not overexposed, and the highlights are blown out and the grain is just it's something else. But I'm sure you guys heard the same audio that I did. It is honestly insane that the video quality is, I would honestly say, subpar when it comes to selfie video, but the audio, the microphones are so perfectly tuned that they can almost immaculately bring out my voice without bringing in any of the background noise. Well, most of it is reduced almost entirely, and that is insane, especially because the iPhone, which does have a good microphone, it didn't even come close in terms of the background noise reduction. So that's honestly worthy of a lot of praise. And yes, I know, I just remembered that I forgot to take the selfie portrait video that I usually do. Remembered that I forgot. It doesn't make sense, but regardless, I forgot to take it and now I'm out of time, so apologies for that. It's honestly not that good, and either the Xiaomi doesn't even have selfie portrait video, by the way. Now for the rear cameras with 4K 30, and yes, I did manage to take almost the entirety of this video comparison, almost, at World at Dubai once again, and the reason it's so empty is because I snuck in. I say snuck in, I had access early on, and before anyone else was allowed inside, so I basically had full access to the entire exhibition hall, which looks stunning by the way, without any of the crowds. So it's just the perfect opportunity for a video comparison. Regardless, I think with 4K 30, both are doing a stunning job. There's really not much to complain about. Both of them have some jerks make it into the video, I do want to point that out, but with the way the iPhone tends to balance out the exposure and handle the highlights, you might end up with maybe some crushed shadows in certain instances, but less blown out highlights, which is actually the way I would prefer my videos to look. Blown out highlights just don't look all that nice, and that is something that I'm seeing more of with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And now with the ultra wide camera, well, you see, with the ultra wide, what I'm noticing is that the Xiaomi does have a little bit more contrast, and secondly, it does appear to have more detail. It's almost like the iPhone is trying so hard to reduce the noise, and maybe it's also got something to do with the stabilization, because I'm seeing more jerks making it into the iPhone's video. But whatever the case, I'm seeing less detail, less texture, especially like take a look at the carpet and stuff like that. We'll have a proper details test coming soon enough, but for the most part, in this video at least, I do think the Xiaomi has better details, and the highlights, as opposed to the previous main camera video, is actually being better preserved on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, oddly enough. But then, what is possibly my favorite videography feature on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is the Master Cinema mode. You see, this is kind of like a flat video profile that you get. Of course, it looks flat now. We do get a lot of room for color grading, and if you don't want to deal with log video, because that is very flat and it requires some proper pipeline and understanding of log video to really grade it, and maybe you're just a beginner and stuff like that, well, then this is a very good middle ground. This will basically give you good dynamic range, and it'll give you enough headroom to color grade to a certain extent, but it also won't be complicated. So essentially here, that's basically what I've done. A very mild color grade, a little bit of color contrast, teal in the shadows, a little bit of warmth in the highlights, just to make it pop. And that's about it. Alright, now for zoom, see, it should be pretty obvious that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is the more versatile camera, for obvious reasons, right? It has both a 3x and a 5x, and both of the sensors are very high quality. So it really shouldn't be much of a competition here. You have really nice looking 3x and you also get a very high quality 5x, which is of course something we do get on the iPhone. Now speaking of the iPhone, of course, yes, you only get the 5x here, but to be honest, it can work out in most situations. I honestly don't really use either of the zoom levels on the Xiaomi, so it's not exactly all that important for me, the versatility with the zoom that is. The only thing I care about is the quality with the main camera, to be entirely honest. But anyways, with the iPhone, you do also get a 2x option. Actually, you get that with the Xiaomi as well, but overall, I would never recommend using the 2x because it's supposed to be a sensor crop, but the quality just does not stack up. It's not nearly as good as it should be, because you would expect 2x sensor crop, it should work just as well as with photos. It does not. Let me tell you right now, it really doesn't. And now let's take a look at focusing. So this is again with 4K 30, and it should be pretty obvious, right? The Xiaomi 14 Ultra can focus really well. It's fast, it's accurate, and doesn't mess up. Basically, that's all you really want when it comes to focusing with any real flagship, especially the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, which is obviously a flagship, but also one that focuses so damn much on the cameras. It would be a bloody shame, a cardinal sin, if it could not focus, right? And with the iPhone, I mean, it should be more than obvious, right? The iPhone can focus really well. It's very fast. I think it's just a pinch faster, and maybe the racking is a little bit more smooth on the iPhone. I'm not entirely certain. It could also be that the iPhone sensor is kind of smaller as opposed to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, so the focus racking is a little bit more subtle on the iPhone. That could be the case. But whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, both of these phones can focus really well. You can see I'm just whipping around and it's not even affecting the phones, either of them. Alright, now for 4K 60, so I really like how the iPhone looks. In general, its 4K 60 is like one of the best that you can get. The Xiaomi though, it looks good, no question about it. I really like the contrast that we're getting on the Xiaomi. It looks really nice, really appealing. But however, I do also believe that you don't really get the same dynamic range that we get with 4K 30 on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. There's a simple reason for that. You see, with the Xiaomi, you get to use something called HDR. Just regular, provides you with better dynamic range. That's the best way to put it. Now, you can only use it with 4K 30 or 4K 24. Not with 4K 60 or 4K 120 or anything like that. So that is really a bummer, to say the least, right? Now look, to be completely honest, it doesn't affect things all that much. It's not like the dynamic range is going crazy and it's horrible on the Xiaomi, but there are definitely slightly more crushed highlights or maybe some crushed shadows that are happening on the Xiaomi that are not really that much of a problem on the iPhone. Also, the iPhone's balancing of the exposure is usually a little bit better as opposed to the Xiaomi, so that can also play a part here. Now then, with 8K, you see, this is interesting. So it's quite a lot of 8K options that we get on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, given that it can produce 8K from every single rear camera. That's impressive, no doubt, but we also kind of have an issue with stabilization. I'll tell you what though, based on this particular video, the 8K is not looking as horrible with stabilization. It seems like Xiaomi has improved the stabilization just a touch. It's not insane or anything, but it is definitely much more usable now as opposed to what it was before. And now for 8K with the ultra-wide camera, this is a feature that is sorely lacking on many other Android flagships that do provide 8K with the main cameras but not with the ultra-wide. Thankfully we have it on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Now look, the detail side of things, detail preservation in general with the ultra-wide camera is fairly good with 4K 30 and 8K, but that's not really a massive boost or anything like that. But overall, the quality, the stabilization, everything put together, it kind of lands this sweet spot wherein you get good stabilization, you get very good quality even with the ultra-wide camera, and you also will obviously get the really nice field of view. So it really does kind of work out quite nicely. And look, it never hurts to have an option for 8K on the ultra-wide camera now, does it? Now with the 3x and also the 5x, to be completely honest, I don't know. It's good. It's obviously very nice, especially if you want to take tight close-ups or something like that, but you can't really walk around with it, so it can be a touch limiting. It's not bad or anything. Obviously I'll take having 8K over not having 8K on all of my cameras, but yeah, it's not the most practical, so to speak. And now we got super stable video, or as Apple likes to call it, action mode on the iPhone. So it's pretty obvious that the iPhone is gonna do better here. It's obviously not 1080p, it's 2.8K, so the resolution and the detail, it's just insanely high. The Xiaomi has this ridiculous thing where it just switches the exposure from very high to very low and it just looks ridiculous. So I don't really know what happens there. So it's not good. Also, the stabilization is better on the iPhone, so it's a slam dunk for the iPhone. Simple as that. Even with the ultra-wide camera, I think the ultra-wide camera is actually more usable because it doesn't do that insane Russian roulette with the exposure, the Xiaomi that is. But overall, still, like, if you're looking for good action mode video, the iPhone is the way to go. And now we have Dolby Vision. You see, it sounds fancy, and it kind of is, especially if you're looking at it on a Dolby Vision enabled display. You're looking at the transcoded versions here on YouTube, so you're not really gonna see the benefit. And actually, I really like how the Xiaomi looks. It's basically as good as the iPhone, which is quite something because the previous comparison that I made, the Xiaomi was really messing up the exposure, but this time it seems to be rock solid. But now, let us finally jump into log video. You see, this is a realm of professionalism. Because, let's face it, log video is going to be used by someone who understands it, can use it, transcode it, and color grade it to make it look absolutely beautiful. Which is very much possible and quite easy with these two phones because it's absolutely stunning. The amount of flexibility you have, simple as that. I do want to point out, I kind of messed up on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. I overexposed a little. I'm not really sure why I didn't notice it. I was in a bit of a hurry, I guess, but yeah, that's my fault. If it looks overexposed, that's on me, not on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. I just want to clarify that. And now, with the color grade applied, it looks kind of stunning on both, even with the highlights kind of blown out on the Xiaomi, which again, my fault, but it still looks really beautiful, and it works, doesn't it? And yeah, I'm taking a little bit of credit here because I did the color grade myself after all for both of these phones. It is, by the way, the same exact color grade that I'm using, and with the 10-bit that we have on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, you're getting absolutely beautiful stuff, no color banding, nothing. You can push it to the limits and then some. Now, I'm not really sure if the iPhone has 10-bit ProRes log or not, but I'm not seeing any color banding or artifacting, so it works out for me more than well enough, right? But I do want to point out that the yellows and the reds are looking really saturated on the iPhone. It is the same exact color grade that I'm applying on both of these phones, so the fact that the reds are more saturated doesn't really feel all that good, but it's a simple fix, to be entirely honest. So at the end of the day, I guess it doesn't really matter all that much. But what does matter are details. So that's exactly what we're going to look at. So this is 4K 30 and we are going to zoom in all the way to 500%. To be entirely honest, it looks almost identical on both. Like, the detail preservation is basically the same. There's maybe a pinch, just a pinch higher sharpness on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. But otherwise, it's on par. And that's fantastic because the iPhone has insanely good detail preservation. But then for 8K, now you see, I do think that the colors with 8K particularly look a little wacky because the iPhone looks very natural, whilst the Xiaomi is going a little crazy with the saturation, especially with the reds and the oranges look a little out of whack. Also, it's looking a little flat. That may be because of the tap to focus, because I used it on both. The Xiaomi tends to be very aggressive with the exposure when you're using tap to focus. But of course, the details are really what matter in this test, are they not? So, zooming right in. Yes, indeed, the Xiaomi 14 Ultra with 8K definitely has a little bit more detail. It's mainly a lack of sharpening and a slight boost in detail that's really allowing it to push forward. This is a 500% crop, of course, but this is kind of why you would want to use 8K. You won't get the 4 times more detail that you would expect based on the pixel count alone, but it is more detail that you're gonna get on the Xiaomi, simple as that. And now, with the ultra-wide camera, I do want to point out, previously, with the 8K video, the Xiaomi was messing up with the colors and the saturation. Now I think the iPhone is really oversaturating. I mean, look at the magenta in my painting. It looks way too saturated on the iPhone. It is saturated on the Xiaomi, but it is oversaturated on the iPhone. Now, I will say the same exact thing I said previously, which is that the details are all that matter. And to be honest, this is interesting. The Xiaomi has a little bit more detail, but about a metric ton more noise, whilst the iPhone has no noise whatsoever. Almost no grain, no noise, nothing. That's impressive. To be entirely honest, that's not something I expected. But then of course the Xiaomi does come in with 8K on the ultra-wide camera. Now look, traditionally most smartphones that I've had the pleasure to review that have had ultra-wide 8K, there's not been a lot of those, as you can tell, but they generally don't possess a whole bunch of detail, or they can't really produce as much detail as you would expect from 8K particularly. And with the Xiaomi, it's kind of a similar situation. I do think that the 8K allows the Xiaomi to have slightly less sharpening, and as a result also slightly less grain, just a minor amount less as opposed to 4K. But I'm still having my mind blown over here with just how low the noise levels are on the iPhone. And of course, we do get 8K with the 3X and the 5X, so why not test out the details, right? The insanely surprising thing is that the Xiaomi doesn't look nearly as sharp as the iPhone. I did see more artifacting and sharpening happening on the iPhone because it is a digital zoom, but yeah, that's disappointing. That we're seeing on the Xiaomi is just... I'm not really sure what went wrong. Anywho, let's move on to the 5X. Now the 5X, again, optical zoom on both. There's optical zoom on the iPhone as well. But there is a massive resolution difference. Does it really matter? Well, turns out, yes, slightly. I do think that with the 5X, which is optical zoom on both, but 8K on the Xiaomi, it does appear to have slightly more detail. But what again confuses me is that with 3X, the iPhone did not have optical zoom, but somehow managed to produce more detail. Or rather, I guess the Xiaomi did not manage to produce any detail at all, which is odd to say the least. Anyhow, now let us finally check out nighttime video. So there are a few jerks making it into the video for both. Maybe I should have been a little bit more gentle, I guess. But overall, I think both are looking quite nice. The Xiaomi in general produces a darker video, as I can tell over here, but yeah, I don't think either of these are going to be disappointing in any way, shape or form. I do think that the Xiaomi's video has maybe slightly more sharpness in some of the textures. It could be because of the high contrast, but definitely something worth pointing out. And now finally we got slow motion. Now this is obviously just 1080p 240 on both. It's not anything special like 4K 120. We do have that coming up, of course. And as you would expect, it looks great on both. 1080p 240 is something that we have always had, and it's something that pretty much works near flawlessly, but it's high time we get upgrades, right? And this is where 4K 120 comes in. It is such a fantastic mode to have. I mean, think about it. You want really good slow motion? Use 1080p 240. Great stuff. But if you want a beautiful, stellar balance between both quality and slow motion, then 4K 120 is the way to go. Simple as that. Well, that brings us to the end of this comparison. I gotta say, I'm a little surprised. You see, I shot the video comparison at the same exact location, Walled Dubai, as I did with the photography comparison for both of these phones. If you haven't checked it out, links are in the description by the way, but both of these phones struggled significantly more with photography as opposed to with videography with the variable lighting and all that jazz at Walled Dubai. Now, especially the Xiaomi, that one was just going crazy. The photography stuff, it was just all over the place, but not in videos apparently. It was doing significantly better than I would have ever expected, even in my wildest dreams. But well, I'm not really complaining here. Now, the complaint is that it needs maybe a little bit more consistency in general. I do like that the 8K stabilization has improved slightly, but it could use a little bit more maybe. Also, the log video, the stabilization in the log video seems to have gotten better, or maybe just fixed itself, something like that, because in the previous comparison alone, which I made like a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, yeah, that one had issues with the stabilization. It was all over the place, just jerking all over. Crazy stuff. You can check it out. Once again, links to all the playlists are in the description. But yeah, this is good stuff, definitely. I do think that still the overall consistency would make most people prefer the iPhone, but the Xiaomi is not bad at all, especially with the Pro mode and the Master Cinema mode and the log video and all the options and all the toggles that you get when you're trying to use director's mode. Yeah, you're never gonna have any issues if you are indeed looking for a professional approach. So with that said, I do hope you guys enjoyed, found this helpful, and I'll see you guys sooner with more. Cheers.